And we will begin a Fox News alert on that deadly train derailment over a freeway in Washington state. Outnumbered overtime, I'm Harris Faulkner. You are looking now live at DuPont, Washington. And this is a city that this trail line was running through from Seattle southbound. This is an Amtrak Cascades line. And we understand that this was the first route that it would run today along this line. Much anticipation since last Friday. A ribbon cutting for the train line that you see in front of you now crashed on the ground. This is Interstate 5 at the bottom of your screen. And just beyond those first responder trucks and ambulances and evacuation buses that you see there in the center of your screen is an area where a railway car is flattened on the ground. We are told that there are multiple fatalities in this. We don't know the number of fatalities or the number of injuries. We can tell you that they are still working a live rescue scene on the multiple cars you see dangling off that overpass. One right in the center of your screen, and then look at the chain behind it. And then out of sight from the view of the cameras now, we know from the Pierce County Sheriff's officer who was there giving an update a short time ago. We've had a couple of updates. Earlier, we were told 3 to 4 additional rail cars are upside down, landed off that train line in a wooded area there. This is massive. We do know that the number of people aboard the train reportedly has now gone up as they get more details on how many. So 78 total, we're told, were there, including 5 crew members. And that, of course, is according to Amtrak. But then you've got the 78 passengers plus 5 crew. You've got the situation there of them trying to get people out. And if there are fatalities, where they can get to them, they will do so as quickly as possible. But we are told that this will be a retracted rescue and recovery operation. It is precarious at best, as you see a car toppled now and then another one behind it, perched, however, delicately, but certainly dangerously. That's a lot of weight up on that overpass, and they are working to get to people as best they can. Our chief correspondent, Jonathan Hunt, is live from our West Coast bureau, and he has been getting details. And among them, Jonathan, is this idea, an interview that came with a nearby mayor, a nearby town, who nearly forecasts this. Bring us up to speed.
Yeah, that interview was conducted exactly 2 weeks ago by Como, one of the TV stations in the area. Mayor Don Anderson is the mayor of Lakewood, and it is immediately south of Lakewood that this terrible accident happened. He warned 2 weeks ago that some sort of accident with this new high-speed train service was all but inevitable, and he called for further safety upgrades beyond the $800 million that the Washington Department of Transport said it had spent on these track upgrades. Now, we don't know precisely what part of track this train was on. What we do know is this. It was Amtrak 501, its inaugural run. It left Seattle at 6:10 Pacific time this morning. That was about 10 minutes late. By the time it got to Tacoma, its last stop before this accident, it was running close to 30 minutes late. It left the newly inaugurated station, for which a ribbon cutting took place on Friday in Tacoma, at around 7:30. 10 minutes later, just about 7:40 Pacific time, 10:40 Eastern, this terrible crash happened. We know from what we can tell of the map that there is a curve at least very close to this site around a golf course, and then this overpass over the very busy I-5. That is where the accident happened. You can see one car dangling very clearly from that overpass. Underneath it, flat across I-5, crushed is another car. And behind that overpass, according to the sheriff's spokesman, Ed Troyer, another 3 to 4 cars on the ground. That sheriff's spokesman, Ed Troyer, gave a rather chilling quote to one of the local TV stations up there, saying, quote, "It wasn't survivable unfortunately. What we do know is that there are multiple fatalities. We simply do not know how many. Officials are not giving us that figure at the moment. We know there are multiple people injured. They've been taken to several hospitals in the area. Among them, Harris, I can tell you, the hospitals receiving victims of this crash is the Madigan Army Medical Center. That is located on Joint Base Lewis McChord, which is a huge sprawling military base very close to where this accident happened. We also know that the Madigan Army Medical Center is requesting blood donors. Now, obviously, members of the public can't get onto that base easily, but they are asking for the military community there to respond and to give blood. That gives you a sense of just the magnitude of this terrible accident and those awful pictures you're looking at right now, Harris.
Yeah, the News Tribune on the West Coast is reporting 78 passengers, 5 crew members on board the train. I wanted to run just this by you, and I think that this will also mirror our updates at the bottom of the screen where our viewers can see it. Jonathan, I'm seeing, and also the names of the hospitals, 77 patients being treated at Pierce and Thurston County hospitals. 78 passengers, 5 crew, 77 in hospitals. That is a high, well, we'll say casualty rate, because that can be injuries as well. That's a lot. And it does match, if you will, what experts have been telling us this morning about the severity of that drop, that impact point of those cars going off the overpass. We do not have the number of people who have perished in this. We do not have a direct number of people who then versus have been injured or were able to walk away from this. But those numbers, that's high. When you have a total of 83 people and 77 to go to the hospital, that's a high hurt rate, if not more than that.
Well, if you look at those pictures, Harris, obviously anybody who was in those cars that have come completely off the tracks is going to be very badly hurt indeed. But if you think of the impact of this and the way that the train comes to a halt in that kind of accident, even those in the cars which did not come off the tracks would have been hurtled forward in their seats. Remember, anybody who's traveled on Amtrak will know very well there are no seatbelts in any of these cars, so anybody would feel the impact of that, so people would be thrown forward violently. So it is not hard to imagine that almost every single person riding on that train, the 78 passengers, the 5 crew, were hurt in some manner and would be seeking treatment at nearby hospitals, Harris.
Yeah, those are excellent points and observations to make, Jonathan. What we do know right now, though, from this active scene is that the Sheriff's Department of Pierce County is there. We know that the NTSB has a GO team that will be leaving shortly Washington, D.C. The NTSB verified that for us a little while ago. Jonathan, we'll come back to you as the news warrants. Things are changing there rapidly on the ground, so Jonathan Hunt will be our point person this hour. Jonathan, we'll talk with you in a bit. Oliver McGee is a civil engineer and a former U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of Transportation for Technology Policy. Oliver, I'm glad that you were able to give us your expertise on this today. I first of all just want to get your thoughts about the injury rate that we were just talking about and what you know about the scene, just in terms of what we're looking at.
Thank you for having me this morning, Harris. Been looking at you live, and this the casualty rate is higher, Harris, because of the cars being thrown off the bridge, a historic bridge, by that, and there is really no guardrail containment of the cars, and I think that we really need to have those type of railing containments. And I think the crash is probably, if I could technically speculate for you right now, it's about associated with getting some sort of positive train control in place on this new rail system. They probably were trying to get that in. And when you have 6 tracks and 6 different speeds, on the highest speed, you need to have constant communication associated with the speed as this train is negotiating this particular bridge, and also communicating with the actual controls and the engineers. And the second most highest rate of crashes by the FRA, the Federal Railroad Administration, is human factor errors. Very much what we see in the FAA in airplane crashes. You have to think, is this like an airplane crash, but it's on the ground and it's at high speeds. But human factors errors can take a play, and you need advances in technologies like positive train control and communications technologies when you bring on these new high-speed rail systems to be able to get that done. This is running about 80 miles per hour, but really over Europe, high-speed rail systems run 325 miles per hour, and that's the speed of an aircraft. So we really need infotech, biotech, and wireless technologies, technologies to be able to improve all of these communications and advances in transportation systems.
Boy, Oliver, I don't think that it's possible that you probably would have read the transcript of the mayor's interview from Lakewood, Washington 2 weeks ago.
I heard it.
What you did, because what I'm hearing you say echoes a part that I have highlighted here in the coverage of that city meeting with city leaders who were expressing dire concern. And I'm just going to read a little bit from this reporting. Right now, passenger trains, including Amtrak Cascades, must slow down due to curves and single-track tunnels on the BNSF Railway main line tracks near Point Defiance and along southern Puget Sound. And we know that that's the area where this is. It's got those iconic views of Puget Sound. This project reroutes passenger trains to a bypass rail line along I-5. The proposed route is the same that Sound Transit uses for Sounder commuter rail service to Lakewood. So they were talking out of experience about the speed line that they were putting in, and your comments just seconds ago seem to support some of this. Your thoughts?
Yes, sometimes the money that is coming down from the federal level takes a little time to get down to the local level, and that's where the technology meets the road or an aircraft meets the sky. And when we talk about this coming discussion after the tax bill from Trump on the infrastructure bill that's coming in, I think this is going to rise this discussion up in Congress much higher. They're asking for $100 billion invested in the next 10 years. And right now, these pictures tell you, Harris, that we need this infrastructure development right now. When you look at this crash, Harris, it's not only crashing and tumbling over a bridge, but the bridge I'm taking from the pictures is a historic bridge, and that bridge looks like it needs retrofit and repair. It needs railings. It needs all kinds of guard constructions, because what you see in this picture before you, Harris, is the intersection of the rail system and the interstate highway system. And those two need infrastructure development so that we can stop these things from intersecting to each other in multimodal transportation. And now what we've got is horrible casualties, which my condolences go to the families right now.
Wow. It's interesting. I mean, you have looked at this much in the same way that the city leaders have looked, and you say that this will elevate that infrastructure conversation that's going on at the highest level via the White House. Oliver McGee, civil engineer, we are glad to have you this hour. Thank you very much. A couple of things to let you know. If you were just joining us on Outnumbered Overtime, first of all, I want to explain what you're seeing to the left and to the right of your screen. To the right is a little bit an older pictures, older by only a few minutes, maybe an hour, stills. You see the rescue board on the right side of your screen, those first responders getting there. We've seen a couple of ambulances pull away. We know that some 77 people have gone to local hospitals from this scene, DuPont, Washington, a train derailment, Amtrak Cascade line along an iconic route, brand new today, offering passengers this route out of Seattle on its way down to DuPont, passing through, I should say it left from Tacoma. The ribbon cutting for this line, happened in Tacoma on Friday, and they were looking forward to this line leaving from Seattle and on down south. So this had a lot of eyeballs on it in terms of what a great day it was going to be, and catastrophe at this point. We are told by local officials there that there are multiple fatalities in all of this, and we know that the NTSB has a briefing planned for 2:30 p.m. Eastern, the NTSB, so we'll be watching and carry that live as well. Spokesperson now for Pierce County Sheriff's Department, Ed Troyer, joins us by the phone. And Ed, we are so glad that you are with us right now, because we've been getting updates from the ground. What can you tell us is the latest?
Well, right now, we believe that everybody is off the train except for the ones that were fatally injured, and they've transported everybody out of here. But as you can see by the photos, this is a bridge that intersects with southbound I-5, the only lanes that go southbound I-5. and there are cars upside down and trucks and vehicles and semis all collided when the train came off the bridge and landed down on the freeway. Some of the cars are in the woods. Multiple agencies from multiple jurisdictions responded, including our military base out here. You know, this is one of the things that all agencies across the country practice for, and hope nothing ever happens like that. But unfortunately, it's happened here. The response has been good, and they were able to clear the trains out really quick and get passengers out on the way to family reunification spots, and they were able to get the injured to the hospitals. And, you know, obviously our condolences, and unfortunately there are some fatalities. As far as the numbers go on injuries and fatals, the State Patrol will be putting those numbers out later in the day when they get them confirmed.
Well, Ed, I have to tell you, this is the first time that we've heard it confirmed what was happening on Interstate 5. We've been very focused on the train, as we should be, because that was what is derailed on this day. But when you describe what's on the ground below, the cars upside down, the trucks overturned, that now is consistent with what witnesses had told us in the very beginning, but we had not heard yet more confirmation. Talk to me about that scene and how you have secured it in this way with your first responders. That is a huge accident scene.
It's a huge accident scene. Not only did you have the train derailment and some of the train go into the woods and still dangling by a bridge over the I-5, but we also have cars and semi-trucks and upside-down train cars right on the freeway. And when that occurs, luckily, through a coordinated response, they had multiple people doing multiple extrications all at the same time.
Wow.
They did a great job in, you know, getting the traffic rerouted, but now the grim task of recovering the deceased, you know, still in these guys' hands. And the investigation on how this occurred will be done by the NTSB, and the State Patrol will be keeping everybody up to date on numbers as we move forward.
All right, before I let you go, this also is consistent, and I was trying to crunch the numbers. You have 78 passengers, 5 crew members, but you've had 77 people go to the hospital. Now I understand. You had extrications. You said multiple extrications going on with cars and trucks on the actual freeway. So you had injuries on the ground and you had injuries on the train.
Correct. And I think those numbers are total numbers that people that were transported from the scene.
Right.
A lot of people were transported walking with blankets to the family reunification spot, and they're not injured. So
Okay.
I don't think those are all injuries. That's how many people were transported from the scene. A good majority of them are on buses heading to meet families and other members.
Were the most severe injuries, what part of the train? Because as we look at this, people are wondering how, we heard, you know, it might not be survivable from one of the officials on the ground, and those were very chilling words. So I want to now really understand about where the danger points were on that train as you know it from pulling people out.
Well, if you look at the paintings on the side of the trains, that means that the people have gone in and searched them, the first responders, and that they're clear and they don't need to go back into those trains again. And train cars. But as far as which trains the people were injured in, or that's yet to be determined.
Okay.
From looking at this, I can't. That would just be a bad judgment call on our end, because it's going to take experts a long time to figure this one out.
Okay, where they were.
Yeah.
You know, we've heard some reports, and maybe you can confirm this, about the configuration inside the train. No seat belts. You might have had some people with items on their laps because overhead bin options are, I guess, very slim. Can you speak to any of that? Because that also talks about what it might have been like for people inside that train as this was happening.
No, I have no idea. None of us have any information on that yet, because they're going to have to get in there and let Amtrak and the people that understand that talk about that. And to be honest with you, by looking at some of these train cars that are on the road, they probably weren't in the condition a little bit ago they are now, so we wouldn't even be able to tell.
Wow. All right. Ed Troyer, we appreciate your expertise on all of this. I know you still have I-5 in that area blocked off in both directions, correct?
Well, I-5 northbound is moving a couple lanes, and they're working traffic through, but I-5 southbound is 100% completely blocked, and it will be for some time.
Okay, 2 lanes open up. You've got some traffic going there northbound only.
Yep.
We're looking at live pictures, a lot of first responders on the ground. This is hugely important for us to say thank you to those people, so I hope that you will carry that. We'll continue to cover the story as it happens. Ed Troyer, spokesperson for the Pierce County Sheriff's Department, responding to the scene you see there. Ed, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, joining us now is a witness that we have just gotten in, Greg Mackay. The train derailed moments before he would have driven under that Interstate 5 bridge. Ed, you're with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. Tell me, if you could, what you saw.
Well, to begin with, I thought it was odd as I was traveling that stretch of highway to see the passenger train on that track. I've been traveling that highway for a couple of years, never seen that, so that caught my attention. Further down the highway, we all had to go to a complete stop. And so anytime you have to come to a complete stop and try to avoid people on the highway from a collision, you look up to see what's going on, and to everybody's surprise, I'm sure, we looked up to see the train in the condition, it is, which is one of them hanging off, another one on the highway, cars that were traveling to wherever they were going, south side 5, being impacted by that train car coming off, and just unreal.
Eyewitness Greg Mackay with us now. He was on Interstate 5. And Greg, you're describing what you could see in terms of the train, but for the very first time, for the Sheriff's Department spokesperson, we got to hear what it was like actually on the ground. What was it like?
After I think people realized what happened, lots of people in their cars got out to rush and see what they could do, if they could help. We are just, that location is just south of Joint Base Lewis McChord, and there were several military personnel that were probably coming off of shift or just getting done with their physical activity in the morning, who ran there and wanted to help immediately. So although it was super tragic, it was a little bit of pride seeing those folks trying to help immediately.
And you could see them, they were on foot? People were kind of walking in between. I'm trying to kind of understand the scene, because the Sheriff's Department was saying that you had semi-truck trailers upside down. I mean, this was a horrific scene.
Yeah, so, as soon as we all stopped, you can imagine, we had to stop so fast that people were darting to the emergency sides of the highway so we didn't run into one another. As soon as we stopped, and we're all stuck now because of the traffic, people are getting out of their cars to look. As soon as you look and you see, people are running in between cars, and they're going to see what they can help. A lot of those military personnel folks came back, and they asked for anybody who had first aid kits or clothing or towels or anything that could help to aid those folks down there. And so everybody, we were looking around our cars and trying to find things to help best we could.
And, it sounds like you guys were, almost put into the position of being there first. We say first responders, but you're getting out of your car. People are there on the ground as this is happening. What were the sounds that you were hearing? Sometimes were people asking for help? Because we're getting reports that people were trying to get out of those cars.
It was very eerily silent, to be honest. I don't remember a whole lot of noises or people saying anything. I think in an occasion like that, when you're looking up and you see a train off of a train track coming down onto a highway, people are definitely shocked. Like I said, the folks coming back obviously asked for first aid kits and things, but I didn't see anybody in the train cars. From my view, I didn't see anybody injured on the ground per se from where I was standing. And like I said, it was probably more eerily quiet than you would imagine.
Yeah, we're looking at some scenes right now, live, a much closer vantage point of the crush of train cars as they came off that bridge. If people are just looking now, they can see the paint that we've heard officials describing, where they mark a car and then move on to the next one. So we now have a close-up live shot to be able to see the cars that they have already gone through. We're told that they will leave the people who did not survive this on the trains while they completely get everybody off. And we know from the Pierce County Sheriff's Department that they feel they have gotten people out of the train cars. They mark them with this paint that you see to the right of your screen, just above the flashing light, and then they move on. Our Greg Mackay was there. And Greg, we are certainly thankful that you were safe and that others got out of their cars, their vehicles. You mentioned Joint Base Lewis McChord and some of our servicemen and women coming to the scene because it's nearby. We appreciate those details, Greg. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief Correspondent Jonathan Hunt is live in our West Coast Bureau. He is our correspondent this hour, and he has new information. Jonathan?
Harris, you mentioned Joint Base Lewis McChord. That is a sprawling military facility very close to where this accident happened. On that base is the Madigan Army Medical Center, Level 2 Trauma Center. We understand that 20 of the injured victims of this crash were taken to Madigan Army Medical Center, and we just got a statement from the center. I want to read you part of what it says. Quote, while we anticipate more patients this morning, 9 patients are currently in serious but stable condition and 11 are in fair and stable condition. Family members of patients are welcome to come to Madigan's emergency room. We will facilitate finding your family members. Assessment and treatment continues. We will release more information as we can confirm it. So the headline there, 9 in serious but stable condition at the Madigan Army Medical Center. And remember, we're only talking about one of the hospitals receiving victims here, but 9 in serious stable condition there. And those sort of chilling words, Harris, for anybody watching this, family members of patients welcome to come to the emergency room. We will facilitate finding your family members. It just points to the terror that so many families, knowing that their loved ones were on this train, will be going through now as they try to find out how they are doing and indeed where they are. So a very frightening time for anybody who knows anybody who was on board Amtrak 501 this morning, Harris.
Yeah, you know, all of this gives us a better picture of what was going on the ground in terms of the actual freeway. You know, I had mentioned earlier to the Pierce County spokesperson for the Sheriff's Department who joined us live moments ago that we had less of an idea of what was happening on the actual Interstate 5 than we did with the trains necessarily. That was our focus, the derailment. But now learning of all of the cars that were upside down, semi-trucks overturned on the freeway, and the injuries, the level of injuries that were playing out as this was happening gives us a little bit more texture in terms of just how vast this accident really has been. Jonathan, you're reporting on that Joint Base Lewis McChord Medical Center, that Madigan, and that is also giving us some good information about what some of the options are medical that are very nearby that Level 2 Trauma Center.
Yeah, but Harris, I just want to get to something that the AP is now reporting, which may be very significant in this. They have gone to a website called transitdocs.com, which records in real time the speed of this train. And according to the Associated Press, the train was traveling at 81.1 miles per hour moments before the derailment. Now, again, this is from transitdocs.com via the AP. Transitdocs.com is a website that maps Amtrak train locations and speeds using data from the railroad's train tracker app. Now, the maximum speed along the stretch of track where this accident happened, which is known as the Point Defiance bypass, is 79 miles per hour, according to the Washington State Department of Transport. So what we have now, according to transitdocs.com, is the information that this train was going at 2.1 miles per hour over the speed limit for that stretch of track. Now, whether 2.1 miles per hour is a significant difference, it would be interesting to ask one of the many experts you've been talking to this hour, Harris.
Yeah, so one of the things that we were told early on by one of our experts was that 1 to 2 miles per hour could happen almost if there was a little unevenness and you went up or down a little bit in the grade of the earth. 2.1 miles per hour, we didn't get that detailed with those experts, so we are going to be talking with more people this hour, and I will certainly ask that, because now we're not just kind of guessing how fast anything might have been going. We had some change in numbers. We won't be looking at that. We can look at now what they are seeing, which is 81.1 miles per hour, to see how that figures in. The medical information that you've given us as well is so important, and we're going to continue our reporting in that regard. Jonathan Hunt is our correspondent this hour. We will bring him back as the news warrants. And now, if you were just joining us on Outnumbered Overtime to bring you up to speed, you're getting a better view now of all of the, look at the transport boards off to the yellow and green and white, the triage area that they now have set up at DuPont, Washington. This is a town along an Amtrak line that has derailed today. Interstate 5 is the freeway that you're looking at, and you can see the cars, those train cars that came off that overpass, and now we know potentially at a high rate of speed, about 2.1 miles per hour more than this line was cleared for, 81.1 miles per hour according to transitdocs.com. That is a website that Jonathan Hunt was just telling us about that looks at Amtrak trains and their specified speeds potentially in real time. So that's the information that we're getting now. Multiple fatalities, learning more about that, and 77 people transported to area hospitals. We know from officials on the ground, many of those may have been able to walk away, but they were taken from the scene. This is a live rescue and recovery effort still going on here. Stay close. Pictures now coming in from a horrible scene this morning. The train derailment in DuPont, Washington, as this train was running along an Amtrak Cascades line for the very first time. Today was the rollout of that new line, and it left Tacoma, south of Seattle now, DuPont, Washington. Amtrak derailment has left at least the people there on the train, but also now we're learning about the impact on the ground. That's Interstate 5. Many injuries. We do not have the number of fatalities at this point, but we knew from the get-go that there were casualties in this. That would necessarily mean at least some injuries, potentially deaths mixed in. But we don't have the hard and fast numbers yet. We do have the hard and fast facts on this. That train, according to a website that tracks it and what Amtrak and authorities are looking at right now, the transitdocs.com, had it going at 81.1 miles per hour just before this happened. It went around that curve that you can see, because when they pull out, you can kind of see it kind of curves to the left. At least one rail car right away went off that overpass and hit Interstate 5. Then you can see another dangling behind it, and then another. And then this gives us the perspective of what we haven't been able to see as we've been covering this now for a couple of hours. We hadn't seen those cars that were left off into the woods. Some of them flipped. And then again, as you pull out wider, and we cannot control these first live aerial pictures, but Interstate 5 was left with cars mangled, turned upside down, semi-trucks overturned. A horrible scene, a scene of injury and death today. You see on the right side of your screen the live look at first responders who are still working to make sure that not only this accident scene stays intact until the NTSB can get there and figure out what happened, but also they have now the grim recovery process. They pulled everybody who survived out, and those people have been taken for care at area hospitals, but the fatalities were left on board, we were told, by the Pierce County Sheriff's Department spokesperson a short time ago, and now they have to recover and go get those bodies from behind. Now, on the ground on Interstate 5, as I mentioned, the southbound lanes have been completely shut down. There are a couple of northbound lanes we've learned that have opened up. As we look at them sort of pick through the scene, I want to ask my crew if I can bring in Oliver McGee. He's a civil engineer and a former U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of Transportation for Technology Policy. Oliver, you gave us some great information earlier on the trouble that you have when you don't have guardrails. You made the observation that this looked like an older structure and how problematic that was. And now these first pictures. What do you say?
Well, Harris, I'm so glad to see these pictures. Again, I want to send my condolences to the persons who've lost their lives. But you are absolutely right, Harris. These are spectacular pictures. And what it shows is this train was clearly going at a high speed of operation. But once the sudden impact of the brake starts, these trains come together like dominoes. and you have to contain the spread of the crash. That's what we're seeing is a crash spread. And more importantly, when we didn't have the railing protection on these historic bridges, we then have the train tumbling onto the highway interstate system, which causes an intersection between the railway and the highway system. And I think that this is really the real critical thing, that these new pictures show how transportation intersects. It's called intermodalism. And more importantly, safety is important at the intersections of these two modes of transportation. We need positive train control because that ensures train separation and collision avoidance. It ensures line speed enforcement, and that the temporary speed restrictions that are necessary for making wide turns and sharp turns. And more importantly, our train system has to slow down at some point to as small as 30 miles per hour. And that's required in order to negotiate the infrastructure itself. And this is what President Trump is calling for in that infrastructure bill, to just rehabilitate our crumbling infrastructure. And you're right, Harris. You and I were pointing out and looking to the fact that this is a historic bridge. We could see the history aspects of the bridge. And then the top pictures show only one rail line was going through that bridge. So this is only one-way pass, and it had to be going at 81 miles per hour as the speed. They're trying to show how fast the high-speed rail system can be, but by world standards, 81 miles per hour is very, very slow compared to what we have in Europe. That's 325 miles per hour. That requires a whole new rail line system to be developed, and the bridges in which they go over. And they need to be protected so they don't fall over. I believe, Harris, we're seeing most of the casualties came when the cars tumbled off the bridge.
Yeah. Well, and as we have learned about the injuries, Oliver, down on Interstate 5, it's been very chilling because we were so focused in on the train. But when you talk about cars upside down and semi-trucks, just the force, the sheer magnitude of overturning one of those and making a mangled situation on the ground, it shows you the impact and the power with which that train was traveling. As you say, we had one eyewitness on who would have just been going underneath this bridge had it not been for a slowdown and potentially for this happening in front of him, basically. Just describing the eerie silence. You know, everything kind of comes to a halt here. But I want to talk with you a little bit about the idea of what might have been missing here. And this is not, you called it technical speculation. What we know from city leaders here is that some of this was a critical look before they even put this train online today. There were some angry city leaders and leaders wider than the community DuPont that you see here nearby Lakewood. The mayor there very upset and on the record saying that something like this could happen. We have reached out to some people, but I know sometimes the day of, it is tough to reiterate those words, but you can bet that will be part of this conversation. And, you know, we're seeing now them on the ground. They're already, are they already doing their investigative work? Because this is part of what you know about.
Yes. They are doing their work. The National Transportation Safety Board is immediately on the ground now. They're trying to piece together the aftermath and the puzzles. But first and foremost are the first responders to be able to save lives and also to recover casualties, and also to be devoted to the families. But second, right behind them is the people who are trying to really talk about the issues that you and I are talking about. What was wrong with the speed? How much communication was taking place inside the engineer, and at the same time, what were the human factors? The second most highest problem for train derailment in the Federal Railroad Administration is human factors errors, very similar to what we see in the FAA. So those human factors errors come about, Harris, when there's not enough communication and modern communication, digital communication.
Well, Oliver, I know you were saying that, and forgive me for jumping in here, but you were saying that there were several lines that ran together, or just tracks, I should say, that ran together here, and you said that meant that there needed to be constant communication.
Yes, the Federal Railroad Administration and the Department of Transportation is really asking for us to get a map of the entire global positioning system of the transportation system, not only for air and car, but also for rail, because we really need as your previous guest says, there is a black box inside the train. We need to have communications across all of these systems because they're all intersecting, Harris.
Yeah.
I always called for, when we were trying to track MH370, it's time to put the black box in the cloud. We sometimes need to put the black box in the cloud for trains, planes, and automobiles as we develop the brand new infrastructure.
Interesting idea. Okay, I want to just jump in here because this has just happened. Governor Jay Inslee's office, Washington State Governor, has just tweeted out, Governor Inslee has now declared a state of emergency relating to the Amtrak 501 response. Again, I want to repeat that for people who are just tuning in. It is 1:43 on the East Coast. The NTSB, National Transportation Safety Board, is due to have a 2:30 p.m. Eastern news conference regarding the catastrophe that played out on Interstate 5 as an Amtrak train went off the tracks and onto the interstate. The governor now declaring a state of emergency relating to Amtrak 501. We know that other trains along this line and nearby lines have been shut